And can all of you hear me okay? I know we were having some problems with my audio at full board.
All good.
Wonderful.
It's good. Yeah.
Okay.
And Jesus, could I ask a favor? If Sandra doesn't join, if we're making changes, if you could make changes on the draft?
Sure. I can
Okay.
pull that up.
I
All right.
see in the document right now, Jesus, so that's great.
Great. B, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to September 28th meeting of the Bylaws Committee. My name is B. Disman, and I am the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. As a reminder, New York State law now requires all community board members to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. Members of the public, you may raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. I have to thank Maura Wang for taking the minutes tonight. Thank you, Maura. I really appreciate it. We will continue to rotate that. We now will take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call.
Good evening, everyone. I will call your names. When you hear your name, please answer present, and then I will announce if there is quorum. B. Disman.
Present.
Thank you. Adam Hartkey.
Present.
Thank you. Seema Shah.
Present.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod. Does not look like we have him. Maura Wong.
Present.
Thank you. Mark Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. With 5 out of 6 members present, we do have quorum.
Thank you, Jesus. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And I will ask Jesus, since I can't see people, to let me know if there's any raised hands.
I don't see any.
Okay. Then, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the May 4th committee meeting were distributed ahead of time. If there are no objections, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Again, Jesus, do you see any hands?
No, no hands.
Seeing no objections, the minutes from the May 4th committee meeting are adopted and will soon be available on CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one who may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about the committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hands through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. The only accommodation on that, Jesus will help me to identify because I can't see you all. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Committee members are required by the state open meetings law to have their Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed during tonight's entire meeting, from call to order to adjournment. If you must step away from your computer briefly, you are required to leave your camera on. The order of the adopted agenda should be as follows, and I'm going to ask Jesus to put on the agenda. And you will see we are going to be discussing Bylaws Section 7, and I think Adam will finish that. There'll be a discussion of Bylaws Section 10, 11, 12, and 13, and I will cover that. We're going to do a review of the working draft And today we're going to concentrate on the review of section 3 and 4, which is the election of officers and terms of office. I think there needs to be some clarification on some of the items that we were talking about there. Chair's report and old and new business. So we're going to start with the first item on the agenda. And Adam, do you want to lead us in that discussion?
Sure, absolutely. I can defer to Jesus if you just want to share the working doc, or
I think Jesus is looking for it.
My apologies. I have way too many screens open.
yeah, same, guilty as charged.
I always resolve to go through them, close them up. It never works. They just proliferate. Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Yes, if you could just make it, can you make it a little larger, or that's it?
Sure.
My apologies. I didn't know if we were still using this or not, so I just kind of made I would have dropped my notes in here, but I just kept them separate just in case.
Okay, no problem, Adam. I think if we could keep on one document, because ultimately we'll review this all and then decide to, okay. But you could always add your notes in. So
yeah, well, honestly, I think just we can run through these, I think, potentially pretty quickly. I think most of them is just I just wanted to sort of gauge how you guys were feeling, and then if we think we should make the change, then we'll make it. So I guess to start off, I think we talked about this last time. I think the last time we actually met was in May, and so I just want to clarify here, because this is we're talking about actual meeting procedure. Do we need to include additional language about like a digital meeting, or is that covered up top in the basically the preamble?
So I had that question, Adam, because I felt that we are talking about digital meetings now. So I actually felt it would be important to include it, but I don't know if the open meetings law takes care of that, but I would see no problem including it. So Jesus, any comments?
The issue with the open meetings law is that the language in the open meetings law that allows for us to do these online meetings and perhaps eventually hybrid meetings, that will be repealed in 2024 unless the legislature extends it or modifies it in some other way. And I wonder whether it's the best idea to have language in the bylaws that has an expiration date, essentially, if that makes any sense.
So my only comment to you, there's a section in the bylaws that says that if the law changes or regs change, it would be appropriate to change. So I think for clarity, I mean, it's my own personal, I don't know how other committee members feel, for clarity, it would be good to put it in. Adam, is that your position? Then let me see if the other board members have a comment.
I mean, what I was thinking about, based off this conversation, when we talked about May, was that maybe we just need a sentence or something that just, says something along the lines of like, this adheres to the digital procedures or something like that. I don't think we have to get super specific, but yeah, or we can just say, or we can just refer directly to the first paragraph. These procedures will follow, as referenced in section 1, paragraph 1.
Any other thoughts by any of the committee members?
That sounds good to me, actually. It's pretty simple and clear, and yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so no, if people seem to agree, Adams, why don't we put it in? Where would you put it?
I mean, we could probably put it before like section A, because it's like the chair will, well, no, it's after the agenda. So we can make it a subsection. We can make it a subsection after A that says, these meetings will follow.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
something like that. I can drop in a note.
okay. Next, Adam.
So just to be
Yeah,
clear, is Adam
sure.
writing something or am I writing something?
He's
I-
going to drop you a sentence.
Okay,
Yeah, I can drop in a note once I'm done.
great.
Thanks. So this actually, I think this is another question for Jesus. So it's actually a question I've had, in the Zoom era about the roll call. Is it possible that we can amend it to where you can just read off the names as opposed to doing the call and response?
I'm sorry, I'm being dense. What is, I don't understand your question.
So when we do the roll calls, like what we did just now, so like one option could be you just read through the names, like I see, so and so and so and so are here, and then have a chance. And so you could potentially run through the names faster as opposed to saying, Adam Hartke, and then I have to respond here.
The only thing about that is that, one, I would say I'm not sure that it takes that long to do it the way we're doing it now. And at the very least, we would have on the record every member saying, I'm here,
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys really, really want to do it the way that's being suggested, I mean, it's up to you guys, and we can move that
Yeah.
direction. But I think it'd be better to leave it as it is. And
Okay,
So, Adam, I think we need an affirmative for people to say that they're here.
that works.
Because some people have problems getting on, use their, other things. I think it's better to have the affirmative. So if no one objects, I'd like to keep it the way it is.
Okay, that works. So my next question was for 3A. It's actually the last sentence. So each speaker shall be limited. So this is in regards to the public session. Each speaker shall be limited to no more than 3 minutes, which is really standard. I no objection there. But it's basically the last part about, however, that the chair or the board may vote to extend such time by simple majority. I don't know. I feel like the board voting to extend time seems like I don't know. I understand why it's in there, but it also seems like a little overkill. So I don't know. I was curious if we should just remove basically everything after or the board.
We actually,
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
I was gonna say, sorry, I don't think we ever really use this. It's sort of just,
Yeah.
It's when people ramble on too much that we have to cut them off rather than saying, you can have more time.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of
I
chair's
would
discretion.
go, Mark, I would go with what you say, ended at chair, because it's usually the chair that says, like for the borough president or someone, they could take some more time. I don't think
Yeah,
it goes to the
exactly.
board. So I would propose, if that's your thought, Adam, and no one disagrees, to cut it off after chair.
Well, do you mean by chair, or do you mean each speaker shall be limited to no more than 3 minutes, provided that the chair may vote to extend, or provided that the chair may extend? Yeah.
Yeah.
You have that, you just take out or the board.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a vote if it's just one person.
Yeah,
either.
I think that was supposed to, it looks better that it would read chair of the board and then remove the may vote to extend by simple majority. Right, so that provided that the chair of the board may extend.
Yeah, the chair of the board. You're taking out the or.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, Sandra.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. My computer just decided to do an update, so I'm trying to get through it.
Nice.
Okay.
And remove
So we'll take
the
out
majority.
the word or.
Oh, right.
Yeah, take out touch time by a simple majority. Yeah.
Okay. So the chair of the board.
Oh, yeah. The chair of the board.
Yeah, period. Isn't that what we're saying? And
Well, we
then
want to say that they can extend time.
Yeah, we want to give them.
The chair of the board may vote to extend such time, period.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, Adam.
So this is the second part. I kind of wanted to run past you guys. So I know that we've done a lot in the last year to streamline this portion of full board. And it seems to be that this is where the rules of the road sort of like fall off. And I'm wondering if we want to specifically create some guardrails here. Specifically, like, because sometimes there might be no questions asked to the representative, or there might be a 10. And ultimately it's the discretion of the chair who's running the meeting, but it seems to be there's not really consistency. So I was thinking something along the lines of maybe we could limit it to 2 questions, per representative, per elected, and then members can follow up, on their own with more detailed, or something along the lines of there could be a time limit where may not exceed something along the lines of like 20 minutes or something like that. But I was just thinking in this section is like, do we want to potentially give ourselves some guardrails, or do we just want to leave it as is?
Any thoughts from committee members?
Yeah, I just have an initial thought, Adam. Like, if we're limiting it to 2 questions, like, you never know who's going to get selected.
Yep.
And you never know if like the more substantive question is not addressed. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking right now. I don't necessarily have a solution to it, but I'm not sure I like want that alternative.
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would say that chairing a public session is a little bit of an art, and can be difficult to prescribe a very specific amount of limits and times in the bylaws. I think it really needs to be at the chair's discretion to kind of, and sometimes there are relevant matters that happen minutes before the board meeting that are crucial to inform the board of, if matters are actually before the board on the business agenda. So I would be a little nervous about saying 2 minutes, 2 questions, anything that's like a hard stop, that then we would be in violation of if we were just trying to get the required information through.
Okay.
Any other comment before I comment?
Is there a way we could elicit questions ahead of time from board members, or is that just adding another layer of complexity that we don't want to add on?
Yeah, I think more that adds another layer. I actually agree with Sandro. It's the chair's responsibility, in my mind, to conduct the meeting, and it is an art form. I kind of think sometimes the questions have nothing to do with their personal, or some piqued interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think it's really incumbent on the chair to control it. I wouldn't prescribe 2 questions or 4 questions, because as Seema said, you don't know what the questions are. Some might be greater because of what's happening. So I don't think we should limit ourselves, but I think it is the role of the chair to control.
Okay.
So I would leave it as is. All
right, let's leave it. Okay. Next one for me is actually section D. For me, this is so much, I don't really have an issue with it, but it's like, I don't think that this has happened in the past.
It has.
It has? Okay.
At least a handful of times while I've been here, we have had to inform members that the bylaws does not allow this. So it doesn't happen every month, but it has happened.
It used to happen a lot.
Got it.
And you had to be like, no, people got it eventually, but.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mark. We saw unbelievable situations years ago. So I think it's
okay.
Just let's keep it.
I mean, didn't that happen with the co-naming stuff?
Yeah, that's actually what made me think about it. Was like, wait, didn't this just happen like a couple months ago?
Yes. Let's just. It's for all our protections.
Okay, great. All right, more of a clarifying on my end. So thank you for answering. So
and maybe there's I don't know. Sorry, Adam. Just a quick comment. Is there a way to potentially like add context to this bullet, which said something, and I'm literally talking off the top of my head, so this is not well thought out, but such discussion should be limited to, committee, like the committee meeting, or something like that. Like, I guess I want to try to say, like, you do have a recourse if you do want to discuss something, just go to the committee. But if it's not worth it, I'm just, just trying to add some, like, I don't know,
Well, I
guidance.
think
is the wrong word.
I think where you're going, Steamer, is these discussions are more appropriate for committee meetings.
Yeah.
Well, what we've told the people we've had to remind of this in recent years is that just wait a few minutes into the business section and then you can speak your piece. The people who want to do it at public session, it was always a little bewildering. They'd want to do it there, but no, if they just wait to the business session where debate on the resolution happens, then they can, in theory, say what they want to say.
Right.
That's true.
So is a sentence the flip side of what you said, Jesus? This is appropriate for business session only? Does that clarify it?
I think it's pretty clear now. I mean, we've been able to apply this without any kind of additional language. If you guys want to add, really make the point, drive the point home, I guess, but I think it might just be okay the way it is.
I'm fine keeping it the way it is.
Yeah, I am as well.
All right, let's move on, Adam.
Okay, so next is the business section of 4. It might be highlighted on your screen. Yeah, perfect. So this is the question I wanted to ask you guys. So it's basically about the voting of basically allowing a public member to speak. It's like, I don't really recall this happening. Maybe this is the case. Anyway, I wanted to just lean on your institutional knowledge to see if this was in fact an issue. Is there a reason for this, or do we need to clarify or potentially delete this?
Yeah, we've definitely utilized this in the past. I'm sorry, I can't see anyone, so I'm raising my hand.
No, it's okay. I can't see you, so Jesus,
Okay.
just if no one is talking, just talk. I know that.
Okay, so yeah, sorry. So I was just going to say that we've definitely had, obviously during the business session, we want members of the board to be the ones discussing the business before us, but often we've had an SME, a subject matter expert, or someone intricately familiar that we need to get additional information from in the auditorium or in the virtual meeting, and we would need them to add additional information. So I think this gives us the ability to do so, and we've definitely passed.
Yeah. So my question here is that the way that it's written, or at least the way I'm reading it, is that we have to, in theory, if we did that, it's like we have to vote on it as a board. But it's like, my understanding is that what you just described usually was at the discretion of the chair.
I think, I don't think we've taken a formal vote in a very long time on this. I can't recall when.
So again, this goes to the other thing where it has upon a vote of the board. It can say, however, the public is invited to be present and a member of the public may speak upon recognition by the chair. I mean, that's what you're really saying. I don't ever remember Sandra, Mark, who's been here the same time as I, ever doing this in a vote of the board. Am I wrong?
I think it's always been the discretion of the chair since I can recall.
So do we want to change it to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Recognition or discretion?
Discretion.
Discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so my broader question is then now on the second is this one? Now here we go. So it's all the way down to F.
Okay.
In terms of the committee reports and the proposed resolutions. So again, like, I know this is where things can get rather spirited sometimes, and this is always, we've sort of walked the line in terms of what should be done versus at full board versus what should be done back at the committee. And again, I'm wondering like if we should consider putting potentially guardrails here in terms of structuring the debate to where it's and so essentially like an idea would be is like we could have a set number of speakers, and then after that number we would then have to go to a call to question or an amendment. And this is the rule can be suspended by the chair in advance of the vote or something along those lines. Or yeah, so that's one suggestion.
Anyone have thoughts on that?
Adam, can you repeat your guardrail idea again, please?
Sure. So something along the lines of so basically once it's open for discussion on the floor, you know, it's open to 6 speakers, and then after 6 speakers, again, I'm just using a plug number here at 6, it can change. You know, that means then we have to either go to a call to question or propose an amendment, basically to move the item along.
Your thinking is that if there are too many people speaking, this is likely a case where it should be sent back to committee.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent on the board members themselves, if they feel uncomfortable with it, to send it back to the committee, which takes precedent, you know, over other kinds of votes. I'm concerned, Adam, unless
Sure.
Sandra and Morgan Moore have comments, that we may have some controversial issues that may come up that require a lot of discussion. People have opinions of it, and I would really hate to do that. We tend to self-discipline ourselves by people raising, return to committee or other things. I don't know anyone else's thoughts. So I would hate to limit, because I think some issues just require an awful lot of discussion.
Yeah, and I was thinking there is like we potentially, again, if we wanted to go something like that, we could have something that the chair could suspend, that rule in advance or something along the lines where they have the ground rules before we actually get into the business section. Like if they anticipate it to be an immediate issue, we could suspend it, before we discuss it.
Yeah.
But again, if this is getting too convoluted, we can just scrap it.
Yeah, I think it'll be thought that we're trying to muzzle people. So I want to hear everyone else's opinion.
As a person who sort of watches the meetings kind of removed from everyone, because I'm not a member, I guess I would have to agree with B. And I think this question is very similar to the question just from a few minutes ago about the electeds reports and putting constraints on the public session. Some of this stuff is more art than science. And this is where, the skill of the chair and the self-discipline of the members comes into play. I think sort of when you have too many constraints on something, then you have to be responsible for policing them. It's a little, unless I can't recall many times when, we've had like, throngs and throngs of members just wanting to debate a particular topic. So it does seem like it might be worth considering to just leave this the way it is. And if there's a specific problem, to sort of see if the board amongst themselves can help resolve it.
Sure.
Anyone else have an opinion? Okay.
No, I just want to add that just to Adam. I mean, I hear what Adam is saying too. I'm just curious if there's a way, again, to like use broader discretionary language that says like that the chair can announce that, given the debate around this topic, it should go back to committee. Like there is a discretionary element that the chair can utilize to say that this needs to go back to committee given the level of discussion on this.
I don't know.
Or is that
if you want
too
to give...
unilateral?
Yeah, I think it's too unilateral. Members of the board will send it back to committee. You've seen it at the meetings when you're dealing with something. I mean, we even saw it on the transportation thing this past meeting. where there was a lot of confusion as to what the thing was, and it went back to committee after discussion. So
Yeah.
I think this is something that we self-police, and I think it's incumbent on all of us. I would not like to have a chair unilaterally send things back to committee. That's my only opinion.
So one of my thoughts, the second thought I have on this one actually is the process of sending something back to committee. You know, personally, I feel like we waste way too much time debating about whether something should be sent back. And I'm curious, like, if we should just either just speed that up, because if we vote against it, if we vote it down, it's automatically sent to committee, and the chair who's presenting the resolution has a discretion to pull it outright. It's like, I'm wondering, like, if there's a way that we could actually just remove that step and just like we either have to vote on it, or, you know, vote on it as amended, or vote on it as presented, or the committee chair can pull it. Like, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like we've wasted a lot of time having to do roll call votes, you know, for something that procedurally it could have the chair can just yank it and send it back to committee anyway.
I think though that the chair normally has discretion to like shut it down.
Right.
I mean, there were a couple of times when, like, I think I might have been rude, but hopefully I wasn't, and did that. You know, like after like 15 back and forth by the same 3 people, that, you know, the chair should just do it automatically. I don't know if we even need to say it in here. I think it's something that just sort of be in chair school kind of. That's
I would leave it at him, because otherwise I think we have other things that we really want to get done, and this will become a focus again of trying to shut things down.
Okay. All right, and last one for me on this is voting for B2. Again, it's just, do we need to include something about a digital ballot here?
So I saw that, and I think we do need the digital ballot. I underlined person only.
Okay.
I think we should be clear, because we're doing digital ballots now.
Okay.
Anything else, Adam?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone, committee members, have anything to add on section 7? Jesus, are you seeing any hands?
I see no hands.
Okay, thank you. Then I will move on to the next sections that I said I would cover. And I'm going to tell you what my comments are as we go through them, okay? So I'm going to section 10, which is the duties of the district manager, okay? And people have raised questions as to who should appoint the district manager, and it is the board. We've been through that, and so it has to go to a vote, so that stays. I had 2 questions. If you guys look at the duties of the district manager, only because I think that we're not doing things as they are, but I also don't know if it will cause issues if we raise it. So the first one I have is 2, and it says to preside at meetings of the district service cabinet, compile the minutes of the district service cabinet, and furnish them to all board members, and facilitate the coordination of delivery of services at the district level. So I think when you look at how we have been handling this, or should handle this, we basically it'll be covered during the report, you know, at the monthly meeting, if there's anything to be provided. And also it's covered in our newsletter, if there's anything in the area that's significant. But I have not seen minutes of the district service cabinet furnished to all board members. We do it either orally or since we have the newsletter. Am I correct, Jesus? It's in the newsletter.
We did furnish minutes years ago. You know, one member or so would raise a stink about it for a little while, and then we'd do it. But no questions would ever be asked, no comments would ever be made. We didn't get the impression that anyone was reading them. And so then we stopped, and then we heard nothing again. So we've done it sometimes, but we don't currently do it.
I don't know what everyone, this is, I personally know that this is one or two of our board members' particular issues, okay? But we just have not been following that, and I just don't know in this age whether we should be distributing things in other mains or cover them as part of our meetings. Do people have thoughts about this?
Do we just put them on the website? I think other boards do that, right, Jesus? I think, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not certain that they do, because the district service cabinet is not a public meeting.
Ah,
So I
okay.
hesitate to put minutes of a meeting that is not public and by law is not required to be public on the website, because then people will be like, well, how do I go to this thing? And
Yeah, I know. Oof.
yeah.
Been there.
Any other thoughts?
Or does it go to exec? That sort of thing. No, but,
Well,
Sandra?
On some level, I think the broader question is like, I mean, if the board really, really wants this, we can do it. We take notes of the meeting, but we don't put them into formal minutes anymore because they're not distributed anymore. But at times it does seem like the office sort of does these little special things and projects, or certain things that are required by such and such a thing, but we get no feedback. We get no indication that the board members even pay attention to it. And where there's so much to do, you really have to focus your efforts on what actually matters.
Right. I was thinking in terms of another set of minutes, maybe to Mark's point, like having at the executive committee, just a quick rundown of some topics that were discussed. So if there is interest in a particular topic, that could be requested, and then details of the conversation or the decision that was made at the cabinet level would be circulated to the executive committee.
Well, if we do that at executive committee, Sandra, they each have committees, and if they feel that they want to talk about it at the committee, it can go further down, or if there's no interest, that sort of ends it.
I was just thinking like Jesus, as the district manager in this case, would potentially say the district service cabinet met, we talked about A, B, C, D, and if there's a particular interest in a particular transportation issue, then the chair could ask for notes on that. Doesn't have to be a formal set of minutes created to the point that was made earlier, in case no one actually is going to check them regularly.
Any other thoughts?
I like
So
that
you-
suggestion, Sandra's suggestion. Honestly, as a newer member of the board, I wasn't even aware that this was something that should be going on. And I don't feel at a loss for never having seen minutes about what was discussed, and assume that the chairs of my committees are doing their jobs and bringing the pertinent issues to our committee meetings.
And as an aside, one reason why I'm conflicted about the district service cabinet. We hold the meetings. I personally, it does seem sort of like a relic of a time when I think community boards were more powerful. These days, the meetings, it's hard. Many of our breakthroughs on service request issues happen not necessarily in the service cabinet, but rather with very specialized meetings or calls with the agencies involved. And that's oftentimes where we get to the material for the newsletter. A lot of times at the district service cabinet, it's, such and such an agency that may or may not have a thing to report said this or that thing, or the people or the agency that we really need to take action on something is saying, oh, they'll get on it, but nothing really happens. And, that doesn't make for exciting reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
understand.
can
I just add one thing? I'm sorry. I was going to say, I understand Jesus' point, but I do feel like the board office has been particularly useful with the service cabinet when we're having a very targeted issue, that let's say, hypothetically, there's a storm drain that always floods at a specific intersection. And we've had the board office repeatedly pull together DOT, EDP, DEP rather, or all the different various groups effectively. So I think there have been more times of importance of the district service cabinet, but I understand your point where on a regular monthly or bi-monthly or whatever sequence of meetings, it's less powerful because we're not having direct oversight over all city services.
Yeah. So if I can combine what I'm hearing, and we change this to say to preside at meetings of the district service cabinet and to inform the executive board members of the issues covered, as well as facilitate the coordination of delivery of services to the district. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, Jesus, can you take that?
Sure, okay. To preside at the meetings of the district service cabinet
And to inform the executive committee, the board members of the executive committee of significant issues, as well as facilitate the coordination of delivery of services at the district level. Make sense?
and to inform the executive committee of the issues discussed.
Right. As well as facilitate. I can't see what you're doing, so I'll take it as correct.
So now it now reads to preside, or it will once the suggestion is accepted, to preside at the meetings of the district service cabinet and to inform the executive committee of the issues discussed, as well as facilitate the coordination of the delivery of services at the district level.
Okay, are there any objections to that language?
I just feel like it sounds like two separate things mashed into one, but maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
Oh, you're talking about facilitate? I was just picking up the language that was there.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
section.
I just picked up the language because I think facilitate the coordination of delivery of services at the district level is the job there. It could be a second sentence.
Yeah, it is. So just for people who have never participated in a district service cabinet, I do feel like what happens is the district manager in this case would bring together multiple agencies, get updates from them, maybe again on specific tasks or specific initiatives or concerns of the board, and help coordinate a response. So I understand how that sentence, if you're not directly familiar with the district service cabinet, kind of is weird and doesn't seem to make sense, but I think it does support the district service cabinet mission. I don't know, Jesus, would you feel that that's out of place there?
No, I think it's fine where it is. I've even reading it the way it was before, it never struck me particularly as out of place.
Yeah, maybe we need to do a better job of explaining the district service cabinet to everyone.
Yeah, I think especially
maybe that's the takeaway here.
Especially for newer people who are probably, as Wanda said, you probably just heard about it for the first time.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been on the board like nearly 5 years. I never heard about it. So yeah.
Okay, that rests my point about the minutes and everything. Okay. So we could leave it as an and, or you could leave it as well as. So whichever, if you want to keep the and in, I'm fine. Any objections? Okay. My next problem goes to 7. Okay. And I was a little surprised, and let me give a little background on the whole taking of minutes. And I was a little surprised at the board meeting. I believe it was the board meeting. If I'm wrong, please correct me, folks. That one of the committees indicated that they were no longer taking minutes at their meetings. I did not know that that was a unilateral decision that committee members can make. So I have the whole question of minutes. And then I have the whole question, remember, this is under the district manager. So this is to compile the monthly board minutes and to present the draft minutes to the secretary and to the chair for approval prior to minutes being furnished to all board members. So I actually thought that the office provided details that were given to the secretary who did the minutes and not providing the monthly minutes. For those that are on longer than I, any comments? And then any comments on the fact that one chair unilaterally eliminated minutes to begin with? A chair of a committee. Sandra, I see your face, so I'm going to go to you.
No, I was just trying to process that, that entire, how that happens, or how that doesn't happen. I don't think, I'm just trying to understand, like, in terms of how the monthly minutes are kind of required as part of a document of our deliberations. Come back to me. I'm still trying to process, like, the ramifications of this.
What I think this person is basing their decision on, I think, one, they're basing it on the fact that it does seem like every month it's a struggle. It's in at least one committee to get people to volunteer to write the minutes. So obviously it's a task that people don't like to do.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
Second, late last year, there were changes to the open meetings law, which I reported on. I think it was November of 2021, which I reported on an exec during my report, that at least while we have videos of the meetings, that a video can be substituted for minutes, but it has to be unedited and it has to be complete, unabridged. The exec talked about this. It was November, so I don't remember exactly what became of everything, but in the end, exec sort of decided that having some sort of minutes, even if they were maybe shorter, is still worthwhile. So, you know, that's how exec wanted to proceed, and so that's what we do. That's what we did. Kyle put together from exec's input a template for how to shorten the minutes. Some committees adopted it, others did not. The office just sort of put everyone's minutes into that template. You know, we created another template, you know, in light of some things in the freedom of information law that required a few things in minutes that we weren't putting in there before. But the problem is that there really is no standard that the board has for, one, whether it wants to do minutes, and two, what they should look like. Until that's sorted out, like, all the older members are going to do minutes the way they've always been doing them. The newer members are going to use what's on the website as the template. So it's kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, so when I looked at this, which really goes to your monthly board meetings, okay, so that's our monthly board meetings, it implies that the board office will compile the minutes and then present a draft to the secretary. Yet the job of the secretary is really to do the minutes. So I actually think this whole question of minutes really needs to be sorted out. I think it is beyond just the bylaws, but what is the intent and what do we want to do as a board? I don't know if it's something we should deal with in the bylaws or suggest that this be something if the executive committee needs to take it up and we get a position of the board. So let me see what other members of the committee think, because I think the way we're doing it is pretty haphazard right now.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go.
Before we
please.
go further, which is sort of ironic given that I'm running for assistant
Taking the
secretary
minutes, yeah.
and taking the minutes.
Yes.
Because I'm on this committee and I've been reading the bylaws, my assumption was that Jesus was taking the monthly meeting minutes. Is that not actually the case? And
No.
so, okay, so it is the secretary's duty. So this is repeating a task.
Well, section 24A of the bylaws say that the secretary is supposed to do the minutes assisted by the district manager and the staff. This section 10.7 seems to suggest that the district manager writes the minutes and then just presents it to the secretary and the chair for approval. So they seem to be in conflict with each other.
Right.
The way we actually do it, we expect the secretary to write the minutes and then they send us, or most of them, a lot of the minutes. We write the electeds portion. We write that because we were getting complaints that it was too much work. And so we just decided just to start doing that part, and all the rezos, the attendance, the votes, all that stuff, we put that in.
Okay.
So you help do this part of the skeleton, but it's ultimately the secretary's job to do the minutes.
Yes, we do a good bit of it, but just because we have the records already, like the rezos and the votes and all that stuff, no sense in giving it to them. We can format all that stuff. Yeah.
So anyone else have thoughts, Sandra's thinking? Adam, Mark, Seema?
I mean,
I'll let Sandra go first.
yeah, I mean, just like so many thoughts around this because it's complicated. I think it's changed over the years where we've had, I think when I started, we had someone like recording on a tape or something, an artifact from an earlier time, of course.
And the digital thing.
Then we got a digital recorder, and we did have a staff member, not the district manager, but a staff member kind of transcribing. And then the secretary kind of ensuring accuracy and that the key elements was there before we would adopt it, of course. I think what's often confusing for anyone who's taking minutes is, what I appreciate about the template is that some people feel encouraged to write, this person said this and that person said this, and it's not really minutes. It's just like it's like a closed captioning transcription. Where we really need is a clear understanding of an issue that was discussed and any vote that was taken. It's just a high level. We discussed this. You could make a couple of comments about what was discussed in terms of substance, and then a motion was made regarding X, and the vote was this. That's what's needed for the minutes. And of course, the more you put into it, the more of a chore it becomes. But it's absolutely crucial, I think, that we do have a written record of what we discuss, what we decide beyond the resolutions, because that's our history, and that's how we go back and actually over the decades and weeks and months remember what we have adopted and what we either want to amend, change, or augment. So I would be worried about saying like, well, we could just have a video that then where does that live? Things get purged after a while. Videos are large. People don't watch the videos either. Whereas if it's text, we can, have it in Airtable or someplace that's searchable and easily accessible to people who can't hear, can't see. There's so many benefits of having actual text documents that are searchable. So,
Sandra, this is just to clarify, are you making a distinction between committee level minutes versus board level minutes? Because I feel like they were joint, like you were talking about both.
I am talking about both of them, on a high level. I think that's just like a principle across the board. On the committee level where we have this template, and I've used the template, I thought it was helpful because it did get some of the pertinent items that you have to include together. When we talk about this at a board meeting, as opposed to just a committee level, it's not all that different, really. There is some, as has just mentioned, there's the reports from elected officials and others and departments, but that it's not all that different in terms of what's actually needed. So it would be helpful if we had a consistent thing. But go ahead.
I would just kind of step in to say maybe I disagree because And you probably were secretary too, because I know you've had every
Actually, I
position
have
on the
never
board.
been secretary of the board. That's like the one thing I've never done.
Yeah. So,
So
I have
you tell
been
me
for-
how it goes.
Yeah, I've been for several years, and I just find it to be such a daunting task to do the board minutes, as opposed to now that I'm just on several committees doing committee minutes.
Mhm.
Like, it's just like, to me, a completely different beast.
Right.
And I'm even saying that with all the support that the board, that Jesus and staff gave me.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's so much work.
Right.
So if there's a way to streamline that versus not streamlining committee minutes, which I think is actually fairly streamlined, I'd be open to that. Like, I think that would be like a step in the right direction, though I have no like kind of landscape analysis on what other boards are doing as it relates to board minutes. But I just found the board meeting minutes to be really lengthy and time consuming, like upwards of 3 to 4 hours at each
Right.
time.
And
Yeah.
what sort of streamlining would you be referring to?
Like, I mean, Jesus knows this better than I do, but like I started like just doing a Google Doc where I would just like drop the agenda in as like a Word doc.
Mhm.
And then again, not trying to name names, but would literally just say like, it was discussed that this resolution should go back to committee without going into this is the reason why, because one member said this and then
Right.
another member said that, and then another member thought
Right.
differently about both of those things. Like, I wish I never really felt empowered to do that, to just be like, let me just give you the like big top level outcome, which was like, this is going back to committee. And so I would often like try to dive into like frankly, my own level of like energy at that time at night to like dive into the
Right.
back and forth of it all.
Right.
Yeah, so I actually think, Seema, the template we use for committee meetings could be adopted for the board meetings. I personally have thought that our minutes, this is my own personal opinion, should be like corporate boards. You
Mhm.
don't
Agreed,
have
agreed.
all of this, you don't have all this,
Yeah.
he said, she
Mhm.
said, having
Mhm.
done corporate board minutes over the years. And also, you do need some record, because, I used to do a lot of stuff in writing regulations and wanting to know not just the acts that were passed by Congress, but what was the genesis that led to it. And
Mhm.
that's your minutes, basically. That's, you go back and look at committee reports and you see what's behind it. But I think there's definitely a way of streamlining it, given the age that we're in. And we don't need she said, he said, or whatever. If there's 2 or 3 different points of view and then a vote, that's what you really need. Okay.
Right.
Mhm.
Just to be clear, Seema, I think that's what I was trying to say. If I didn't say it eloquently, I apologize. I wasn't asking for longer minutes.
Let me go to Mark and let me go to Adam. Any thoughts?
I agree. I think that what we had agreed to actually, Jesus, was that we would, have the recording of it and that people would take those like board meeting kind of minutes, like Dave was saying. Like they get to sort of, maybe we didn't emphasize it enough or just, plunk on people. But because like Mara, you shouldn't be taking minutes that take 3 hours. I mean, Kathy Thompson did, but that was, she was really good at it and it was fine, but that was a lot. But I just think that structure of having a light set of minutes plus a recording is all we need.
Yeah.
And I
Adam,
was
any-
nothing like Kathy, and it still took me hours to do. So just for context.
Yeah, I hear you, and I want to shorten this, but I don't know if it's going to be something we could do for the bylaws or something we have to bring up an exec and deal with the whole issue of minutes. Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's sort of minor. I mean, most of my experience comes with dealing with the MTA. And so like if you go to their open, their open document side with the board meetings. And so essentially what they have is they have each month and there's a minute and there's a minutes, a PDF of what was discussed, corporate minutes. And then also there's a corresponding YouTube video that goes with it. And this goes all the way back to like at least 2012. And I'm curious, like if there's like I know they're subject to the state open meetings law as well. I wonder if there's like a city's best practice that potentially we could hitch our start to and just do what they do, and so where it can still be where we just follow in their footsteps in terms of both the YouTube feed and the digital. or excuse me, in the written word.
So in recent months, the office has started putting at the very bottom of the minutes a link to the corresponding YouTube video, just so that people can have access to it. At exec, there was some, talk about potentially adding the actual transcript, but the transcript, especially given how much people speak about things, can be 100 pages long and a huge file. So, and we'd have to still clean it up, which does take hours of work that we don't quite have.
I don't think anyone's advocating for a full transcript.
But
yeah,
but
no,
we put the video on there as in the minutes. And in the Airtable database that we have for the minutes, we also link it there too. So it's in multiple places. We recently revamped the template to give the new members a sort of something to go by. And it looks a little bit different, but we've tried to convey to them that short and sweet, less is more, and just this is what happened, this is what was discussed, this is the vote. According to the Freedom of Information law, we have the one big change we've made is that it does ask us to list who voted in each way, like this person in favor, this person opposed, this person yada yada. But that's the main change. But yeah, I mean, and I think this is a discussion probably that's better for exec, simply because there are many questions here. I know there are members who are like, the minutes should be a very complete, comprehensive narrative of who said what and this and that. Others who think it should be bullet points. And until the board agrees on a standard and then says this is the standard and everyone's going to follow it, I think we're always going to have issues.
So I'm going to make a recommendation, if everyone agrees, that we take, if no one has an objection, that we take item 7, and that as chair of this committee, I send a note to Carl that the whole question of minutes needs to be discussed again, and I will share with you all the note, because I think this is really more than the bylaws. This is really understanding, and I have never for one been for verbatim discussions of the 3 to 4 hours, Seema, that you did. It's not necessary. No corporation does that, okay? And listening to the MTA, you do need to have some stuff for freedom of information, and you need to have some stuff historical. But I think we reached the point where minutes should be concise with key points and moving on. So does anyone have an objection if we park item 7, which is the duties, and send a note back on the whole issue of minute taking? And I'll share it with all of you if everyone is in agreement. Is there an objection to that? Because we're not going to resolve this here. It's a bigger issue.
Good. I like that. Yeah.
I think we should do that as well. I'm just wondering if for number 7, we can amend it slightly for now, or if that's not worth doing until we get the notes from Kyle and exec. But I think that the duty of the district manager could still include helping to compile minutes in whatever form they take. We just don't know what that is.
So I would put the word to assist in compiling the monthly minutes, okay?
Yeah.
Would do that, but let us come back with that. Let me see if I can get the note out. And we're not going to be meeting under new business. I was going to say we're not meeting in October because it fell under Yom Kippur. So we have a couple of weeks to see what exec will do, and then we could come back to this issue. But I think if we just wanted to keep this, but I do feel after I heard what the committee's chair said in this, that we have to resolve it. And Jesus, maybe it would be good to have one of your staff person just take a look among the community boards in Manhattan. I don't think it's important to go out of Manhattan because they're so different, to let us know what do they all do. I think would be very helpful.
Sure thing.
Any objections? Do you see any?
All good.
Okay. Now let me go to 11. Okay. And I actually did not have anything more to add at 11. It's short. I don't know if anyone has that comment. I assumed when we said email that that's we've been doing that, so that actually confirms it. Okay. The savings clause is what I referred to later, to earlier, which is 12, in the event that any provision of the bylaws is found to be invalid, remaining provisions shall stay as they are. Okay. So that means if there's an issue here that will be invalidated by regs or laws, that it doesn't make all of these other bylaws ineffective. And then I came to amendments, okay? How we would have to present this to a meeting of the bylaws of the board. And my comment in presenting it, and you see with the motion 3, a motion should be acted on a monthly meeting of the board immediately following the monthly meeting in which the motion was made. This raised 2 questions in my mind, and it was actually raised, I guess, by one of the board members asked the question at the last board meeting. Is this something that all the changes in the bylaws that we recommend, and there will be some substantial when we get to the election stuff and some of the others, that they all have to be accepted, or do we vote on change by change? If you vote on change by change, look how long it takes us to decide this. My comment is I don't remember when the last time the bylaws were done, how this was presented, but my recommendation would be it's a whole document and not vote on each of the major changes that we made. Plus, we've done some editorial with language. Anyone's thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think at the last time we made a bylaws change, we had someone highlight the sections that were updated significantly, not like a comma, but any substantive changes, just highlight them. But we did do an up and or down vote on the entire document. We definitely did not go a comma by comma dissection of it and with everyone.
So Sandra, that's what I was actually, that's actually what I was going to do, is I started to look at the draft, and when we go back, when we do it, is highlight the items that were substantial changes and report on that, but then do an up and down vote. Okay.
Yeah, I would especially recommend that we do that for the sections that were requested, that we had board members request specific review of, whether we decided to keep it as it was or make a significant change. I would just address their specific concerns, I think, as part of the discussion.
Yeah, I saw Mark shake his head.
I just was having a little bit of, PTSD from the last time we did this, and that's how it went. It went very well. There were a couple little blips, but it was much easier that way. So,
I mean, someone just has to yell bundle, right? And that's it.
Yes, Adam, please do.
Okay. The section on amendments doesn't say that the motion will be up or down. Okay. And that's what actually brought this to my mind. It said the text of the proposed amendments shall be included in the written notice of the next meeting of the board, and the motion shall be acted on at the monthly meeting of the board immediately following, but no place does it say it's an up or down vote. So I didn't know if we wanted to include it or just make the assumption that it's past practice and move forward. Thoughts?
I think just past practice, like just leave it as it is and just do as we've always done. And that way, whoever is doing this can say this has been our practice in the past. That's how we always do. And just, but a couple of people are gonna carve, whatever.
Well, I think this also was kind of written because it might be that amendment is a single sentence, but we did a comprehensive review of the entire bylaws based on feedback and concerns. So knowing that we have, more than a single sentence to review, I think it doesn't really make sense to have such a piecemeal discussion on every single sentence at an entire board meeting.
Okay. So I think as we think of the presentation, I think that becomes part of what we're doing. So I have nothing more on the articles that I was going to do. Anyone have any additional comments, or I will go on to the start of the review? Does anyone see anyone's hand?
I see no hands.
Okay, so I want to bring us to election of officers, which is Article 3. And I want to go over a couple of things that we spoke about when we were doing the draft, and a couple of things that I saw in the election of officers in putting forth the nominations this year and in dealing with some of the election of officers. So we moved the times of the election of officers, if we look at it, at the board meeting, not in June, but in September, where actually Maura was the one that raised this, which I thought was a really good point, that when we had the election of officers now, the new members, and this year we have almost, I guess, 10 or 11 new members, Jesus, am I correct in my numbers?
We have 10.
We have 10 new members, which is a substantial number of the board. They don't really get to know, because when they come on, we're off for the summer. And then here we are in September that we start putting the names of people. So when we did the draft, we said at the regular meeting in the month of September, the chair shall appoint, we moved it from June to September. The chair shall appoint an elections committee consisting of 3 to 5 elected as it is, and shall designate one of their number to be chair of the committee. The elections committee shall meet as often as necessary to report a list of candidates to the board. And then the list of candidates we move to October as opposed to September, okay? So what that meant was in September, you formed the committee. In October, you do the list of candidates. In November, you would do the election. And then I have a question afterwards, which is, would the term start in December or January? So that's a question for us. If you do this, we have to change, which we didn't do, section 2 under A2, which says that if I look at it, all eligible members of the board who wish to become candidates for the office described shall contact the chair of the elections committee in writing within 4 weeks of the announcement of the election committee. You would have to shorten that to 10 days or 2 weeks in order to meet the time frame, because you're narrowing the time frame of what we're doing. So I just wanted to go over to see if, number one, if people are comfortable with that change in making it now. We did that very early on. And then I want to talk about afterwards the elections committee, the nominations themselves, contested elections for positions, and reports, and who's the real chair. So let's deal just with the timing. Now, if you would all go back, remember our discussion, and see if this is timing that we think is better than what it is now, to address the comments of new board members and to give us a little more time. And also not to have as wide a gap between in the summer of getting the nominations, and then by the time we vote on it is in October. So I'd love to hear what members of the committee have to say about what we determined to deal with. Anyone want to go with that? I'm hearing silence. Vote on it is in October.
The only thing I think maybe is, I'm just thinking of, like, appointing in June versus September. If it's June, then there's a lot of time to kind of get the committee together and see what they're doing. But other than that, it doesn't need to be this massive, 6-month process. So I don't know. I think I'm okay with the September and October.
Okay. Anyone else want to revisit this? Or any thoughts? Maura, would this help you as a new board member?
If the process started after I had also started, I think, yeah, it would give me more time to understand who and what was going on.
Okay, Seema, thoughts?
No, I think your proposal makes sense to me.
Okay. Adam, thoughts?
Same. I agree.
Sandra, experience, tell me.
No, I think it's too long right now, and it doesn't quite align up with where members come in, as was mentioned. I will just say, I think it's fine the way it is, but I will just say that I have seen some election committees that were ill prepared and needed the amount of time that they had to coordinate a response to coordinate an election and actually get candidates and register them and report. But I do think that it is doable, and we just need to ensure that our election committees are actually organized going forward.
Mhm. Okay, so then can I go on to the election committee itself? Okay,
B, before you go, so what change am I making here? 10 days, 2 weeks? What am I doing anything here?
I would say two weeks, okay?
Okay,
Of the announcement, yep, okay.
Yeah. And then I would say, you have to do the coordinating thing of when you have to do the list of candidates out. And I would do that with 10 days before the meeting, not 2 weeks, so that you're able to do it within a month. So there were a couple of things that I saw this process that I would like to raise that I think have to be made part of the bylaws. You know, when you nominate, certainly the bylaws permit for self-nomination. And we permitted nomination by others of individuals. But before you nominate an individual, I think you need to speak to that individual to see
Yes.
that the individual is willing to serve. I mean, we had this situation this year where, some people not understanding the process just nominated people and didn't get in touch with the people. And so then what happened is when the chair of the nominating committee, the elections committee, reached out to them, they did not want to serve, okay? And I think it's incumbent on anyone, if you're going to nominate someone else, and I think that should stay, you need to speak to them. The other thing, I'm going to do all four and then hear your comments. If you have now the chair of the elections committee reports to the chair of the board. If you happen to have a contested election for the chair, okay, I think you have to do what we are doing this year, is the election committee reports to the first vice president. Because you can't have the chair of the committee who's being contested in an election control the election committee. You have to put it to someone who's running unopposed or not running, okay? And then you also have to talk about what is the discretion of the chair of the election committee. What decisions stay within that? For example, can the chair of the election committee describe the process for the election? For example, you could give a statement that's 250 to 300 words. You could appear. You can speak for 2 to 3 minutes. That should really fall to the chair of the election committee. So each one of these things became an item that came up this year. And I think the bylaws should really be a little more structured in dealing with some of this. So I'm going to turn it over to committee members first to see what your thoughts are and observations. Don't all speak at once. No thoughts?
Sorry,
Sandra,
I'm
I'm picking on you, Sandra. Go ahead.
good.
No,
Go for it.
I think Mark was saying something very intelligent that we should listen to. Go ahead, Mark.
Actually, I wasn't. I was just saying, it was going to Sandra go first. I think normally we're okay, but there have been some glitches. But I don't know, what are the, repeat what you were, your thoughts be, how's that? Let me, and I'm gonna try and break it into bites.
So
I
one,
think.
if you're gonna nominate someone other than yourself,
Yeah.
you need to talk to that person to see if they're willing to serve.
I completely
Okay.
agree, because it's happened several times in the past couple of years. It didn't used to
Right.
happen. And you have to, I think then that should be required, that that person must reach out. Because if not, you're wasting everyone's time and embarrassing everyone. And it's just silly.
Right.
It's
Then
ridiculous.
second, if there's a contest, now the nominating committee or the elections committee reports to the chair of the board.
Right.
If the chair, if there is a contested election for the chair, you have to take it away from the chair of the board.
Right.
And I think it should be the first vice chair, unless that election is being contested, okay?
Right. And we got to have that language in there that, because like it's not this year, but maybe next year it might be. And then, you know, both could be
Right.
contested. And I think things may be contested a lot in the future, maybe not, but we need to say if it is contested, then it goes to the second vice chair.
Right. I mean,
Then
you
what
have a
happens?
structure of people. And then
Yeah.
the third thing
So
that I
I have a
think
question on that one.
Go ahead.
So let's say all the positions are contested, then who would
Yeah.
then chair the committee?
What? Wait, I didn't understand that question.
If the
So
first
if-
vice chair race is contested and the second vice chair race is contested, or say all the officerships
Right.
are contested,
Mhm.
who then is reported to? If I may give my input as someone again removed from this process, but that gets to see it all the time, I'm inclined to not overcomplicate things unnecessarily. I think if the bylaws were very clear on what the process were to look like, there would be little room for discretion. It's just like, this is what the process is. I had no idea until this year that it could turn into a process, because it seemed to just
Convoluted
work so
process.
seamlessly. It worked just so seamlessly every 6 other times that I was able to view this, and this year, not so much. But I would also be wondering if the committee would have an appetite for just eliminating the nomination by other people. And just, if you want to run, you have to self-nominate, and that's the only way. Because that way you eliminate this whole, let me nominate someone I've never spoken to. You know, it just for, if I were an outsider seeing that, it seems to trivialize the idea of serving as an officer of the board. Oh, this is something you don't have to put any thought in. It looks bad. Excuse me for being so, I don't usually like to, it looks bad. It really does. And if you just make it so that you must self-nominate, I don't think that's a hardship. And that eliminates the whole
But we're all
talking
too
not talking
humble.
to somebody.
Jesus, how would we ever?
Yeah.
No,
So I have to,
I have
Go
one, I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Sandra.
So the thing that actually took me back was the comment that the elections committee reports to the chair. And I don't think that that's true.
it is in the bylaws.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's true in reality, right? So I feel like the chair appoints an elections committee that then is required to report to the board. Not, especially as you point out, I mean, often chairs are running for re-election. It shouldn't be that the chair of the board is running the election or running the elections committee. They should appoint parties that are not interested in running for any of the office that's before us and report as a committee to the board. And that should be the end of it.
So I think, though, you always have to have a point person for a chair, okay, whether it be a committee, if certain things come up. You don't talk to the whole board, okay? So you have to have someone that's designated, Sandra. Otherwise, it doesn't work with the questions that might come up. And I think we all have seen it over the years, some of it running more smoothly than others.
Yeah.
But I want to go to Jesus's thing. I think I'm comfortable with other people nominating other people, because you may have some people that are timid to put their name forward, that may be newer, that may need someone to talk to them. But if you're talking to them, you haven't nominated them until they agree. So it's not like you're putting a name forward and then they have to consider, but they give them the ability to consider. I don't know if by eliminating other people doing it would narrow the scope too much and deal with that. Because, over the years, hey, when I ran the election committee too, you have to talk to people because not everyone puts in for every position. So
You gotta
that
recruit.
was something that we all wound up talking. But that's it almost takes place before the election committee actually gets together, talking to people about the potential candidacy. Sandra, you were going to say something else?
No, nothing further.
No. Adam? Thoughts?
It's just one thought is that
Nothing for me.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are a little bit shy to nominate themselves, so maybe it's good to have but you should, have to ask that person first.
Right.
This is polite, seriously.
But is that an auspicious way to begin a leadership role on the board? Like, I'm not certain I want to do this. I need to be coaxed into it.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's necessarily the reason. I mean, I can imagine that it's often it's showing a level of support that you might already have, right? So someone who thinks, for example, that B is an important member of the board, if I wanted to ask her, would you consider nominating me? That brings B's expertise to the nomination, as opposed to just saying, hey, I'd like to run for something. So I can see that going either way. I'm indifferent on this, honestly.
Yeah, I like keeping it as an option. It's like a formal endorsement, a public and formal endorsement of someone.
I have a question. If it's written in the bylaws that you have to talk to someone and someone does it anyway, is there any repercussion or?
Well, the repercussion is we go through what we went through this past time, that from the floor, someone nominated someone and the person said, no, thank you. And there was all that embarrassment.
Was it really that embarrassing? I just felt like I was like, okay, moving on. I didn't find it.
It had been done before, and when you keep repeating it, it's embarrassing.
I think
I know. I was there.
Yeah.
I was there. I just
right.
I'm like, to me, it just makes the person nominating being embarrassed, right? Like, I don't know.
No, the person nominating wasn't, but then for someone to have to say no, thank you, they have to think about it because it is all your colleagues. I just think it's bad business practice. Okay.
Right.
But I also do think that, elections committees and people do talk to other people and to see if they're interested in running, and we give them their support. I think that's how it's done in politics, and we're not any different. Right. So let me ask the question, Jesus, because I can't see. I don't know. I knew when we were doing the meeting the last time, Lawrence Shire was going to join. He did the election committee this time. Is he out there listening to this or not? Because I think maybe he would have some comments on some of the issues.
He is not. We do have Letty Simon as an attendee listening, but Larry is not.
So I don't know. I would just say this, if Letty's listening, if she wants to comment on any of these things that I have just put on the table.
Letty, your mic has been enabled if you have anything to say.
Sing out, lady. Sing.
I'm not hearing anything. Perhaps.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. I said I agree with B. Having served on that committee, I'm aware of some of the difficulties that we had this year. But and B and I have talked. I agree with the conversation. I have no additional suggestions. I do think that there should be more than one way to be nominated, so that either self-nomination or indeed have a board member nominate based on past conversation and everything.
Thanks, Letty.
When the my
Letty,
mic,
we're losing you.
can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay.
All right. So if the committee would agree, then why don't I write up, and for our next meeting, I'll write up some
For
of
the
the,
chair in a contested election, that perhaps if all of the other offices are contested, that you ask a past chair to you know, pres- when you
Like
have to recuse the
Going down
chair.
the most recent chair, next.
Yeah.
right.
Hopefully we
Okay.
won't get that far down.
Hopefully, I have never seen, because I've seen things vacant as opposed to all positions challenged. So if the committee, I'm looking at the clock now. If the committee agrees, I will write some sentences for this, and then we could start with this at our next meeting. If everyone's in agreement, I want to be conscious of people's times. I think this has been a really good discussion, okay? Does anyone object to my taking a stab at some language and circulating it?
No, can I just ask a clarifying question? I feel like I've heard a few references to what happened with this election cycle and like the challenges and issues, but I have no awareness on like what people are referring to. So I don't feel like I'm contributing that like productively to the conversation. Is it just the nominating thing?
It's a
Or is there-
nominating thing. Seema, what had happened is, when there were competition for the chair position and the election committee reports to the chair, there had to be some decisions that were made, as to what process would be and stuff. And it just was the feeling that the chair shouldn't be deciding decisions because it's not an equal footing for whoever else may be running. So you really need to give it to someone that's not involved in the contested election. And then it also became the question of how do I contact members of the board? How do I actually wind up giving my presentation? Can someone do, how long could the presentation be? When could it be? They were all process questions. And I have to admit, I did the election committee last time, and then we didn't have any of these things. So it wasn't an issue when I did the committee. It just was the matter of different people and different candidates.
Okay, I understand.
Does that help?
That does. I mean, I
Okay.
would just say from like, it might be naive of me to comment this way, but if the point of the chair of the board is just to uphold the bylaws and then procedurally we identify what the bylaws are around election time, I guess I don't see a conflict of interest for the chair of the election committee to report to the chair of the board, because all the chair of the board is empowered to do is uphold the bylaws.
But that's why I was trying to put some more stuff in the bylaws so that we didn't have to deal with some of these issues.
No, I know, but we also talked about, chain of succession as it relates to who the chair of the election committee talks to, but I'm not sure that's necessary.
Yeah. So why don't I write it up and then we'll come back with that to talk about at our next meeting, if everyone's in agreement. Okay.
Sure.
So let me then go to old business and new business. And for old business, other than to say, and I said this at the beginning, that in October, because of the holidays, we won't be meeting, so we will be meeting in November. I hope we would finish up the election and then go back to the things we have parked, and I will make a list of all the things that we need to finish that we said we'll take up and deal with. So I did ask Jesus to send everyone Sandro's draft. Unfortunately, I had to get a hard copy because I can't print what Sandro has done.
All
My
right.
system doesn't let me, but I think if you should all have a copy of it, and we will be working, with that document as well. My hope is that we could finish this up by November, December, and present it in January, and deal with the bylaws with the major changes. There are a couple of major changes that we're making, and I agree with Sandra that we go back to what people were suggesting, and we talk about the discussion of those and the changes that we are making. So anyone else have any new business? Okay, if there are no objections, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion
Yes,
to
lots of
adjourn.
heads shaking. Yes. You have many
Okay.
people suggesting that.
Bundle. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you
we
all.
spend time on important issues, folks.
Yeah,
So I
no, this is
do
great.
appreciate your time
Yeah.
and effort, and thanks to all,
Good.
to
Great
all
work,
of you.
everyone.
Thank you, V.
And
Thanks,
everyone, great
Thank you.
work and great thoughts.
Yeah.
Again, take
Yay.
care, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks. Good
Bye.
night. Bye.